So, as you've probably guessed by the title, today the subject is valve lapping. And what is valve lapping? When should you lap a valve? How do you lap a valve? Stick around and we'll investigate. Okay, we'll start off with the question, when should you lap a valve? And the answer to that is, very simply, the main reason you're going to lap a valve is, well, let me back up. Valve lapping isn't something that you do to fix an issue with an engine. Let's get that out of the way right up front. Think of valve lapping as more of a finish operation or a check operation to verify that your machinist didn't make a mistake on your particular cylinder head. Let me explain. Here we have an intake valve, and I'm going to stick this intake valve in the guide, and I'm just going to wiggle this valve back and forth. Now the most wear will happen in a valve guide parallel with the rocker arm, because as the rocker arm moves up and down, it's exerting this motion on the valve, and we'll wear that guide in that direction. So what I will do, this is a quick and dirty method of checking a guide to see if it's worn excessively, but I will stick a valve in the guide and I'll wiggle it in the direction of travel, and then I'll wiggle it the other way. And a quick and dirty rule is that this worn dimension should not be twice of this dimension, the perpendicular dimension. If it is, then you need to do something with the guides. So, as an engine wears, what's going to happen is the guides are going to wear, and also the seats and the valve faces are going to pit. And that pitting is caused by heat and carbon. So, as the valve, particularly the exhaust valve, you'll see this more on an exhaust valve than you will an intake, but what will happen is the exhaust valve will run very hot. So exhaust gases are running past this valve, heats it up, and it's slamming into the seat, and it's taking a little bit of carbon with it every time it does that. And pretty soon the valve face will pit, and you can see that. So typically the exhaust valve will pit more than the seat, because the seat's sitting in a big chunk of metal. It'll stay cooler. But the valve face will always pit with wear. And in an extreme situation, the intake will too. The more miles, the more chance that it will pit. If the pitting is excessive, what starts to happen is the valve will stop sealing. You'll lose combustion pressure, you'll get low compression or leak down through either the intake or the exhaust valve, and it's time, at that point, it's time to do something with the valves. So we typically call that a valve job. Typically with a valve job, what the machinist will do is he will measure the guide for wear, repair the guide, and this head, these are knockout guides. You can knock these guides out and just press in new guides. On something like a cast iron head, you would drill oversized and put a bronze liner in it. Old school way to do it would be to knurl it and then ream it to size, which works fine for cast iron heads. But since this has a removable guide, the machinist would measure the guide and then replace it if the wear was excessive. And then, after he did that, he would insert a pilot into the guide and insert a special tool that would grind the seat. So, special tool to grind the seat, and obviously, if the guide isn't aligned perfectly, then the cut will be off. If the cut is off, that will keep that valve from sealing. As I was saying, valve lapping is a finish operation. What you're going to do is you're going to check your machinist to see if the work that they did was accurate. Now they will have a special tool that will seal the combustion chamber and put air pressure on the valve to make sure that it's sealed. It's almost like a leak down tester, but it's made specifically for testing valves. But machinists will sometimes get lazy and not do that. So I always like to check their work myself to make sure that it's going to seal. After all, you don't want to put an engine together and then find out that the valves aren't sealing. So valve lapping is a quick and dirty method to make sure that the machinist did their work properly. It's also, let's say that you have a bent valve and you replace one valve in your engine. You can check the integrity of that valve by lapping it quickly and then look at that lap surface and make sure that everything is straight. So let's see. Here's an exhaust valve. This one's the pitted one that I showed you earlier. So when I say that you're not going to repair something by valve lapping, if I put some lapping compound on this and lap it, it's not going to repair the pitting in this valve. In fact, let's do that. Just going to grab some lapping compound. You can buy this at any parts store. That's a little bit too much. And we just take a little bit of that and we're going to put it on the face. And then we're going to drop that valve in its hole. And then our special tool looks like something you could shoot out of a dart gun, but it's just a suction cup tool that you can attach to your valve and then spin it. And I'll spin it and I'll lift it up and put it back down, and that kind of moves some more compound in there. And as you do this, you can hear it after you do it for a little bit. The sound will change as those particles get ground up and you'll get a finer finish. Hear that sound change? Okay, I'm going to wipe off my compound. And you can see that face isn't fixed at all. It still has pits in it. So valve lapping isn't going to fix a valve in its condition. What you have to do is you have to grind the face of the valve. I've already done this one. So now I've ground the face of this valve, and this seat, I believe that this seat isn't pitted nearly enough, that I will have to grind the seat of the valve. So we're going to try that. Let me go ahead and lap this one and see how it comes out. And this is exactly what you want to see. So both the face of the valve and the seat has a thin gray line all the way around it. And this thin gray line is where that valve grinding compound was trapped between the face of the valve and the seat. And if there was a problem with the machining of this guide and the machining of this seat, what you would see is you might see gaps in that thin gray line where there was no contact between the valve face and the seat. Or perhaps if it was slightly ground off center, you would see the gray line would be thicker on one side than the other. so it would taper to a thin spot. And that would tell you that when the valve seat was ground, it wasn't ground concentric with the guide. So this one came out pretty good. But I had to grind the face of the valve. And typically you would also have to grind the seat to get a line around the valve and the seat that would look like this. So you'll never get there with a pitted valve. That's why I say it's more of a check operation, more of a finish operation after machine work has been done to your particular setup. So let's do one intake valve. These intake valves look really, really good. This engine doesn't have a lot of miles on it. I'm pretty sure that this will just lap out beautifully. There's no pits in the valve. There's no pits in the seat. So let's just go ahead and do that. We got a thin gray line around the face of the valve and a thin gray line around the seat. So this head will probably be fine. I'm going to do all the valves like this. But as I was mentioning, you can't repair a pitted exhaust valve or a pitted intake valve with this method. Here's an example of a really extremely pitted valve out of a small block. And this would have to be ground for sure. Now, when you grind a valve, you have to look at this margin, this flat spot right here. And if this gets too thin, if it becomes a knife edge, then this valve would have to be replaced. So this one's already ground. You can still see I have a pretty good margin there. So these exhaust valves, on this head, all the exhaust valves will need to be ground, but all the seats are fine, intake and exhaust, and the intake valves show no pitting. So they just need to be lapped to verify that they're going to seal correctly, and I can bolt everything back together. Well, there you have it. And as always, thanks for watching.